Hi everyone, this is the first of a handful of video lectures I'll be posting up this week, and what this first video is designed to do is just sort of get you to see the big picture of everything that we're talking about this week. The topic is the market revolution and revivalism and reform. And so these two things are innately linked. Much like we saw in the 1700s with the Enlightenment and the First Great Awakening, the market revolution is going to spur on a process of revivalism and a number of reforms within key American institutions. So when we're talking about this idea and this topic generally, really what this is all about is a total transformation in the American economy. What's happening during the 1800s, it begins a little bit before that. In the late 1700s, you start to see the process of industrialization taking shape. What this means is that production of products, production of goods, is moving from artisanal production to handmade, which is handmade production. A woodworker sitting down and carving a desk out of a piece of wood, or as you can see, there's some guitars behind me, a guitar maker carving each individual instrument. What's going to happen during the market revolution is that those old processes are going to be abandoned. We see a period of hyper competitiveness within the American economy. What this is all about, what's going to be happening throughout this process, is that America's economy is moving towards mechanized production, and as a result, people are pushing harder and harder for competitiveness and profit maximization. And so what's happening here is we're going to see in the agricultural sector, they're going to start to abandon the old ways of carrying out agriculture and start to shift towards one in which the profit is the highest for whatever it is that they're growing. Within the production of other goods and products, we're going to move from artisanal production, which is handmade, towards mechanized production. We're going to see the emergence of factories. Now, all of this is going to have a major outcome on the United States, both in the 1800s, and it even has a more prolonged impact up until the present. So with this entire shift during the market revolution, what's happening is essentially workers are going to start to be pushed out in terms of their importance in the overall economic scheme. What we're going to see is as this process takes shape, you're gonna have workers are just going to become one part of the overall economic scheme. During artisanal production, generally what would happen is somebody would work from their home, make things by hand, produce a single product and sell it at a high price. That changes once the industrial process starts to happen. What we're going to see after the market revolution kind of comes and takes shape is that the worker themselves they've now been displaced. They're on the bottom rung of society. And the reason is fairly simple. The owner within a factory system is going to be the person who holds all of the capital. They own the actual factory, the machinery within it, and they pay the workers and managers wages. Underneath them, you have the managers, the people who don't physically do the work but are there to make sure that the average laborer does. What this ultimately means is that the laborer is now a low-skilled, indispensable asset to the company. And I think that some of you can kind of see how this connects to our economy today. A factory worker is replaceable. They're very easily replaceable. They don't have any skills. They're essentially going to stand at a machine and pull a lever and do one very small facet of production. When it's all said and done, you end up with thousands of identical products that have been machine produced, and they fetch a really large profit. Now, what this means to the American worker is pretty straightforward. They're, again, as I mentioned, dispensable. If you don't like what I'm paying you, then ultimately I'll fire you and get somebody else, because somebody will work for it. And you can't come back to me now as a worker and say, but you need me. You need me to work in the factory. I don't need you. I can take anybody. Anybody off the street can stand there and pull this lever. So what this is ultimately going to do is create the sort of wealth inequity that people are talking about a lot today. This is where we're starting to see America's economy separate really drastically into haves and have-nots. And so the laborers become dispensable. You can get rid of them. I don't worry about your safety. I don't worry about your working conditions, and I don't worry about what I'm paying you or your work hours. Because frankly, if you don't want to do it, somebody else will. And that's the overall gist economically of the market revolution. There's some social outcomes from this as well. We're going to see that people are being displaced in terms of where they're spending their time. Under artisanal production that was happening before the market revolution, generally what you were seeing is that people would work from their homes. If I'm a woodworker, if I'm a guitar maker, let's say, I'm going to sit here hand carving the wood for the guitar, making sure it's got the right resonance, the right pitch, making sure that it's strung properly, but I'm doing it all from my garage, like where I'm sitting right now. I'm doing it from a workshop attached to my home. My kid would be running around. This would ultimately mean that my wife would be able to come in and talk to me while I'm working. This all changes with the shift towards factory production. And what we're going to see is that now I have to get up in the morning and I go to a factory. And I'm going to be there all day long until sundown. And then there's going to be some other social outcomes we're talking about as well in terms of the market revolution and sort of the response to that, the reforms that people are trying to make. But really what it means is it's separating me from my family. I'm no longer connected to my home, to my family, to my community even. I just go to work, I work all day, I come home, I go to sleep, I get up and I go to work again. And so what we're going to see is a rise in social sort of disconnection from family and friends for the average American worker. Additionally, you're going to see that more and more people are going to be ultimately sort of not really working within the communal setting anymore. It becomes about what I need to do, what I have to do to get up to go to work, to earn money and get through, feed my family, put a roof over my head. And so the market revolution also gives rise to these sort of a situation in which the American economy is now reliant on capital producers. And so the people who take the risk to open up a factory, to put themselves on the line, are going to be rewarded with exponentially larger returns on the dollar. They're going to make a lot of money, and everybody else in the laboring classes is going to start to suffer quite a bit more. Basically, as I said, I want to keep these videos under 10 minutes, but that's what the entire thrust of this week's lecture is about. It's about the market revolution and then the reform and the revivalism that comes as a response to that. Not everybody thinks that these kinds of shifts in the American economy are good. And so ultimately there will be a pushback against that. And that's something you'll be hearing about in the subsequent videos. Thanks.